When I look back at those first few years in Hollywood, I got a job at a bookstore right away, and not long after got a job as a substitute teacher in the LA Unified, and by the time I moved to Ojai, I was copy editing and proofreading books, and they could just mail them to me. Then I got a really cool job as a story analyst, but right away I hit up the big boys with my material, and they promptly said, "Thanks, but no thanks." So I just put my head down, started knocking out features, 1 or 2 a year. And my experiences earlier with Suburbia Studios really helped me be persistent and keep going. Finally, I had some success with a script in 1990, and a screenplay I'd write the following year, The Daydreams of Aliens, almost went the distance. Then at the last second, the deal flew apart. That's when I turned to writing prose. I do an occasional audio drama on my own just because I miss working with the studio guys. I'd always wanted to write a Star Trek novel, did that, it got bounced. Then I decided to write a serious literary novel, best book I've ever written, it remains unpublished, but it did get me an agent. I was cranking out work, I'd send a story in, get a printed rejection form, send another one in, this time get a handwritten note with some encouragement, send another one in, and I'd get an apology because they didn't have a spot to publish it. I've always tried never to measure my level of success based on one book or script, but gauge it against the level of raw talent I started out with before I moved to LA, before I cashed my first check as a professional. And through the literal million-plus words I've written since then, striving to develop my raw talent into talent. And I think the success I've had at becoming a better writer is what I'm most proud of. And in my first published novel, I pay an homage to Suburbia Studios. I'm having a lot of fun out here, and although I lost touch with Brian for a while, I've always kept in touch with Chris. We talk several times a week. I see him whenever I get back to Fort Worth. And I've been lucky to make friends out here. In 1999, I met Aaron Lindquist, a young filmmaker, and we became friends. That same year, I started dating a girl I met at TCU back in 1986, Joanna Grant. But through it all, I've missed the camaraderie we had at the studio. And it wasn't until 2001 when I finally got a computer that was capable of digital audio editing. And for the 20th anniversary of the original Captain Triangle series that Brian and I had done, I thought it would be fun to get out those 13 episodes and see what I could do with them.
You're my Secret Service man. Protect me.
Man, circle around the president now.
He's coming in.
Oh, so you are the president. Come, we must have a drink of my liver biofluid.
So I took some sound effects off Napster, back when they were still free, and reworked the series. I cut it from 6.5 hours to 97 minutes.
Man, circle around the president now.
Oh, so you are the president.
Once I was comfortable with the new technology, I borrowed a professional sound effects library from Kerry Sims and then dug episode 3 out of mothballs. We'd recorded the dialogue 10 years earlier and mixed digitally. The sound blew us away.
Captain Triangle, I'm afraid you are wanted on Earth for the destruction of Disneyland and the city San Francisco.
What's that you say? They're blaming me for that?
After hearing how great episode 3 came out, I wanted to mix episode 4 immediately. But I ran into a bit of a casting problem I had to work out.
My first experience with Captain Triangle was doing some dialogue replacement in 2001 for episode 4. Chris didn't want to hear his ex-wife's voice, so I taped over the lines. David actually had to add his to my voice to make it match up with the analog things that were done on a tape recorder 10 years earlier.
By the Lords of Cobalt, what's going on in here?
Oh, yes, you buxom wench. Yes, who are you?
I'm Lady Cylindrica. Who are you?
I am Dr. Rhombus, ruler of the whole universe, you shapely wench.
I remember this very well. I just finished mixing Captain Triangle episodes 3 and 4 digitally, had a blast, wanted to do more, but we had no more raw dialogue. So I thought about it and decided to make an investment, and I went out and I bought a Sony digital audio tape recorder the size of a Walkman. I could carry it around, record dialogue, make my own sound effects even. But I couldn't do a show without at least one other actor, and I didn't even really know what my story was about at that point, so I decided to do the old yes or no trick and figure out the story later.
I was just out visiting David for spring break one year, and he had me record a couple of lines like yes and no and something about a Steinway. I didn't even know what it was for, but when I got home, a while later, this episode 1 of the Exodus, showed up in my mailbox and blew me away.
Are we traveling to someplace in the U.S.?
No.
Are we traveling to London?
No.
Are we going to Egypt?
Yes.
I really wanted The Exodus to be a Suburbia Studios production, but to qualify, I would have to have myself and at least one of the original 4 founding members. Brian was off in Canada, Woodley was off in the Great Beyond making movies, Chris was off in Fort Worth, and I wasn't sure where Alan was, so Chris was it.
We wanted to get Chris in an episode of The Exodus, so he actually emailed us a line in a WAV file from Texas.
Ready? Aim!
Working with the studio, I've gotten to do a lot of creative things that I wouldn't have gotten to try before, like doing Foley, or even co-writing an episode of The Exodus with David. It's given me a creative outlet, and that's what Suburbia Studios is about, is giving people a creative experience. And that's been special for me.
What was special for me was finally getting to marry Joanna in August of 2003. I had to leave my beloved tree farm after 11 years there, and we moved to Redlands, California, and set up housekeeping so she could be closer to her job as a university professor at Cal State San Bernardino. Even amid all this change in my life, I'd still call up Chris all the time and lament not being able to do more Captain Triangle. I had a DAT, had a digital editing system, and nothing to edit.
Christmas 2003, David's in town, and again the conversation comes up to Captain Triangle. I just wish we had some Captain Triangle. Just wish Brian. I said, David, it's never going to happen. It's never gonna happen. About a month later, after David went back to town, I get this call and he says, guess what? What? Brian's coming to Fort Worth. I'm gonna get an airline ticket and come to Fort Worth. We're gonna do some Captain Triangle.
We actually sat down and plotted the episodes. We spent 4 or 5 weekends, Fridays and Saturday nights on conference calls, plotting out the scripts and all that. The most special thing was just having the 3 of us back together again. You know, like the old days, and you know, it didn't take us long to you know, drop right back into it, you know, and just pick up right where we left off, you know, back when we were doing these things 20 years ago. I mean, that's sort of the mark of true good friends, is that, you know, you walk in the door, you kind of give each other a hug and a handshake because you're happy to see each other, and then immediately you just fall back into where you were, right? It's just like we've never been apart.
Morgoth?
Yeah.
David, you're already great.
Morgoth?
Yes, my lord, Rambus.
Yes, I would like... David, why do you look at me?
Captain Triangle has always been a way for David to collect the voices of his friends and family over the years. In episode 5, Brian's wife Sophia and daughter Khadijah got to play a part.
A kitten.
Thank your father.
Oh, thank you, Daddy.
You're most welcome, Rombina.
In episode 6, one of David's longtime friends, Nicole Case, a real actress for a change, got to come in and play a part.
There's a prostitute in there as well.
This better not be another ploy to get in my pants, because you're not getting in, all right?
I tell you, we must get my belt buckle and trig saber back now.
Put up your pants.
Doing Triangle is a lot of fun because I have scenes with people that aren't even there. I've never met Brian, and he's in Canada. Chris is in Texas. But it's really the magic of David's creativity and his editing and what he does to make it all sound like we're having a conversation and we're talking together.
Well, maybe your friend Rhombus will cooperate after some more painful electric stimulation. Nick? 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 Nick?
I'll talk.
All right, stop the procedure.
Oh, it's Triangle's friend Morgoth. He's hidden in orbit with the fleet.